How do you get the heat from your wood stove to go through the house in the areas that you want to get heated? I've got a few ideas. I'm Terry from Everything Homestead. Just recently I got a question from a viewer, or maybe a comment, on they were looking for some ideas on how to get the heat from the stove, away from the chimney pipe, the stove, and the back wall, the ceiling, get it to out where you have living space where you actually want the heat. I have a few options for you. Some of these are pretty obvious. Some of them probably you've never really thought of. Let me go over just a few. For my situation, I have it sit down in the corner of my basement. In my basement, I have 2 floors above here. I have an opening real close to me here that goes up the stairs, so the heat travels right up the stairway to my living area just fine. I don't have any problem getting heat where I need it, just from the stove sitting just the way it is. Let me go over a couple of non-electric ways to move the heat, though, in case you do want it to go any particular direction anyway. One option is, if you look at some of the really old farmhouses, they all have these heat registers in the floors, or in the ceiling, depending on which way you look at it. That was designed to get the heat to go from one level to the next level. You could do that here too. Just cut a hole in your floor, put a vent in. You can go on eBay and get the old style vents, or you can even go to your local hardware store and probably find a more modern version. Anything would work, just an opening in the floor with a secured vent so little kids can't slip down in them. That'll get the heat up from one level to the next. Another way to look at it is, when the heat comes up off of here, it goes up and it sits along the ceiling for the most part. Actually, and for me, having another level above here, you get in-floor heating that way. It kind of goes right up through the floors and heats the upper level through the floor into the next level. That helps some. Another non-electric way to go about it is to get a fan. It's a wood stove fan that's energized by the heat of the stove itself. I have a picture of one here that I'll show you. They look like this. And this is almost the actual size of the fan. This is just a variation. There's a lot of different variations on the market. You can go on eBay, Amazon, wherever, and you can find these things. These do work fairly well. I had one of these a couple years ago. It was actually given to me, and I tried it, and it actually wore out after about 1.5 to 2 years. And I just threw it away because I didn't really need it much. But it does work. It doesn't spin super fast, like you can't put your finger in there and have it chop off your finger or nothing. It's not that kind of fan, but it does move air. I could feel it from 8-10 feet away. The recommendation is that you place these on one side or the other of your pipe, and then you can actually directionally turn it to wherever you want the heat to blow. If I were to do this again, or if I wanted to do this again, I'd actually buy 2 of these. I'd put one on each side of the pipe. I think they do a pretty good job, especially if you have a single-story home, ranch-style home, or just one long floor to heat. That would work really well. If you've got your stove in the middle of your floor, you can put fan going both directions. I think that'd work really well. I know a lot of the heat goes up in the room, but these fans actually redirect some of that to the more comfort zone of where you're sitting. So with this particular fan, thought I'd tell you how it actually works. There's no electricity. As you can see the back side, there's no cord. When you have this fan, you set it on the stove, like I was saying. The heat of the wood stove gets wicked up through this metal, up this stem, and then it activates this fan to turn. This fan will start to turn when it gets to be around 160 degrees Fahrenheit, I believe it is. And then the hotter it gets, the faster it turns. Just a pretty neat idea. I don't know who invented this thing, but they did a pretty neat job coming up with this idea. And actually, a lot of these newer ones actually have a little loop up here. I don't know if you can see very well, where you can actually pick up and move it around without burning your hands. It's an ingenious little device. Now, when you move on to the electric options, the first one that comes to mind is you can actually, if you've got a forced air furnace in your home, there is a way you could have a there's like a recirculate setting where you could just turn the fan on of your furnace, and that'll take the air through the intake and then spit it out throughout the house. So basically you'd be taking the air from your wood stove and you're just circulating the air in your house. I don't really care for that idea because a lot of times that means you standing there next to the thermostat turning it on and off, on and off, on and off all the time. And plus you're using a lot of electricity of your furnace fan, which is costly if you do that all the time. So one other option is, like I said in my previous video that I made about building this heat shield, is I mentioned there's a fan that can go directly on this unit. A lot of these newer wood stoves, some of the older ones even, they have fans you can bolt on. And this particular one, that back vent back there is a shield where the fan shoots the air up, hits that shield, and it comes out this way. That's fine and dandy, except it only shoots that way. It works really well. It does shoot the heat out really well, but if you want the heat to go that way, you're kind of SOL on that. It does work really well. It does move a lot of air. It'll help keep all the heat off the ceiling and get it moving anyway. One of the best ways that I think a person can move the heat is something that hardly anyone ever talks about. That is the use of a ceiling fan in the center of your room. Now, if you've got the ceiling fan running, even if it's at low to medium speed, it is moving all the air in your room. Just because you can't feel it doesn't mean it's not working. If you have it where it's on reverse or pushing the air up, it's going to push the air up, out to the outer corners, back down, across the floor, and back up again, and it cycles like that. I like to do that direction in the wintertime because I don't like the air to be coming down and hitting me off the ceiling fan in the wintertime, because people seem to get chilled easier in the wintertime. Summertime feels kind of nice to have a little bit of air hitting you, so in the summertime I'll reverse it and have the air coming down off the fan on me. Personal preference, do whatever you like, but either way, either direction you turn that fan, it's going to circulate the air, hit the walls, ceiling, floor, or the other way, it's going to go up ceiling, walls, floor. It's going to circulate the air. You don't have to have it on high speed to do that. You can if you want. You'd probably be wasting a lot more electricity having the speed of the fan that high, but it does work really well. To tell you a little story about how I come around to figure that out, a number of years ago, I was working on a light fixture in the ceiling, and I have 8-foot ceilings, not super tall, just the average 8-foot ceiling. Working on this light fixture in the middle of winter, and I noticed I was sweating like crazy, and it wasn't for me working hard. It was just hot up there, up against the ceiling, working on this light fixture, getting it replaced. And so I thought, man, this heat's just sitting here in the ceiling. I got to do something. We had ceiling fans that were just off. And so we turned them on, and then I started working on the fixture again, and it was a lot more comfortable up on that ladder, temperature-wise. So then I thought, well, I was working all day in these light fixtures. I had a number of them to fix and replace. And I noticed that my furnace hadn't kicked on. It was like January, really cold out here in Wisconsin. The furnace hadn't really kicked on for hardly at all for the whole day. And I noticed that, well, it was taking that heat that was at the ceiling and circulating it through the house, kept the whole house more comfortable. So I did a little experiment with that. I took I had 5 fans, I think, at the time throughout my house. I had bedrooms, living room, I think the dining room even had a fan at that time. I turned them all on I think they're all probably at a low speed, maybe a medium, mostly low speed. I turned them all on in the whole house, and I let them go for an entire month. Never turned them off. And so then what I would do is I would look at the electricity bill at the end of the month and see how it went. And so I was thinking is that the furnace fan not having to run would be saving some money. And I'm also saving on the LP fuel that I'd be using. At the time, I didn't have the wood stove. And so I looked at a comparison. For that 1 month, my electricity bill dropped $20. So furnace fan not having to run, but 5 ceiling fans all running nonstop. You'd think my electricity bill would go through the roof. But because it was circulating that heat, keeping it comfortable in the house. My electricity bill went down $20 for that month. I thought, well, there's a lot of variations that can happen and cause that, so I tried it again, kept doing it for another month, bill stayed the same. Next month, bill stayed the same. So that proved to me right there that the ceiling fan is super important for the air circulation, and it worked really well for the wood stove too. Even though you can't feel the fan from the ceiling fan, knocking pieces of paper around in your house or nothing like that, that's not the point. It does circulate the air. You'll notice it, you'll be more comfortable. If you have a forced air backup system like I have to the wood stove, you'll notice that it'll probably hardly ever turn on because it's using the heat off this wood stove a lot more efficiently. So these are a couple of ideas for you. I'm sure there's a lot more elaborate ideas using fans and ductwork and stuff. Feel free to leave a comment, suggestion. If you have any other ideas, please leave a comment, subscribe, thumbs up. I could appreciate it. Thank you. See you later.